Previously, Harris led us through the veins of power wires themselves. Copper against aluminum, gauge numbers that meant life or death, insulation that could either protect or betray. We learned that breakers protect wires, not machines, and that every splice or strand tells a story. By the end, Harris's words rang in my ears. Gauge is law. Code is survival. Now he placed metal pipes on the bench, warning us that wires cannot protect themselves. Today was about conduits, clamps, and the mistakes that slice insulation before a current even flows. The workshop smelled of machine oil and dust that morning. On the long bench lay rows of conduits, EMT, PVC, and rigid steel. Beside them sat hacksaws, remmers, conduit benders, and boxes of clamps and fittings. The tools gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. Harris stood behind it all, his arms crossed like a sentinel. Yesterday, you met wires, the veins of power. Today, you meet the bones that protect them. Conduits. Without them, wires die young. Without clamps, conduits betray you. Respect them. Or the building you wire will betray everyone inside. Maria picked up a piece of PVC, turning it in her hands. It's just plastic pipe. What's the big deal? Harris's voice cut the air. What happens when you run PVC outdoors in sunlight? It melts. I guessed. Not melt. It degrades. UV eats it. It cracks. Water leaks in. Wires corrode. Ground faults spread. One crack can shut down a factory. What does EMT do better than PVC? It protects from impact, I said. Correct. Steel resists blows. But steel rusts. And rigid steel. Stronger still, but harder to work. Heavier. More expensive. Choose wrong, and you fail before you begin. Maria sighed. So even pipes are dangerous now. Not dangerous, Harris said. Unforgiving. He lifted a hacksaw and dropped it onto the table with a clang. John, cut this piece of EMT. I clamped it, sawed awkwardly. The blade squealed, metal shavings scattered. When I finished, the edge was sharp and jagged. What mistake? Harris asked. I swallowed. Didn't ream it. And what happens if you don't ream? The sharp edge cuts insulation. And what happens when insulation is cut? Short-circuit fire, Maria muttered. Of course. Fire again. Correct, Harris said flatly. Say it louder. Short-circuit fire. Shouted. Good. Respect the edge. Always ream. Older John, narrating. Years later, I found a warehouse where lights flickered randomly. The crew thought it was bad ballasts. The truth. Wires were shredded on the sharp edge of an unreamed conduit. Sparks had been jumping inside the pipe for months. When the fire inspector saw it, he said one word, careless. Harris handed the remmer to Maria. Fix it. She scraped the edge, rolling her eyes. Whoa, this tiny step saves lives. Yes, safety hides in small steps. Forget them, and your mistake grows into fire. We practiced with connectors and fittings. Harris quizzed as we worked. What tool tightens conduit fittings? Channel locks, I said. And what happens if fitting is loose? Wire rubs, arc fault, fire. And what if fitting is over-tightened? Conduit crushed, wires pinched. Maria groaned. So either way it's wrong, Balance Harris said coldly. Tight enough to hold, loose enough to breathe. He set up a run of conduit and clamps. Maria installed these. She rushed, snapping clamps carelessly, some too far apart, others crooked. What mistake? Harris asked. Maria frowned. They're on. Wrong. What is the maximum spacing for EMT clamps? 10 feet? I guessed. 10 feet for horizontal? 3 feet within a box? Learn the code. Spacing keeps conduit from sagging, wires from pulling, fittings from failing. What does sagging cause? Stress on wires, I said. And stress causes heat. Fire. Correct. Older John, narrating. I once saw a conduit sag across a factory ceiling. Over years, the weight pulled wires until insulation tore. One morning, a motor shorted. Flames spread across rafters. All because no one bothered to set enough clamps. We bent conduit next. Harris showed us the bender. What angle is this? He asked. 30 degrees, I said. And how many degrees in an offset? 2 bends, usually 30 and 30. And what's the rule for total bends in a run? Not more than 360 degrees? Correct. Why? Too much friction? Wires won't pull. What happens when wires are forced? Insulation tears. Maria muttered. And fire. Yes, we know. Yes, Harris said calmly. Because you always forget. We've bent off sets, saddles, and 90-degree elbows. My arms ached from pressing the bender. Maria complained about the weight. Harris barked corrections nonstop. What happens if bend is too sharp? Wire kinks harder to pull. What tool measures radius? Protractor? What's the best practice after bending? Check alignment with level. And what if it's crooked? Stress on fittings. Failure. Maria wiped sweat from her brow. So the pipe doesn't forgive crooked either. Nothing forgives crooked, Harris said. Straight is safe, crooked is careless. Older John, narrating. Once I saw a hospital job where conduits snaked crooked across the ceiling. The inspector failed it. The contractor rushed, tried to fix by forcing wires through. Weeks later, a nurse reported smoke in the ceiling. Crooked had become fire. We spent the rest of the day cutting, reaming, bending, clamping. Harris quizzed us endlessly, drilling numbers and code until they burned in my head. What is minimum burial depth for PVC outdoors? 18 inches? What's required when conduit enters a box? Connector with lock nut and bushing. And why bushing? To protect wires from sharp edges. What's the rule for conduit fill? No more than 40% of cross-sectional area? Maria groaned. This is worse than math class. Math class doesn't kill you, Harris said. By the end, our runs of conduit gleamed in the harsh light, neatly bent, clamped, and aligned. Harris inspected silently, then finally nodded. Lesson 1, conduit is armor. Lesson 2, clamps are guardians. Lesson 3, edges are knives. Forget any, and you kill. Tomorrow, we learn code capacity and the lesson written in burnt insulation. Maria sat on a spool of wire, her hair damp with sweat. I swear, even pipes want to burn me alive. Not pipes, Harris said. Your mistakes? I closed my notebook. My hands ached from bending steel, but the numbers in my head ached more. Next episode, code, capacity, and the burnt lesson.